Today on CityCast Nashville, it's time for our Friday News Roundup. I'm joined by our executive producer, Whitney Pasterek, and independent journalist and former Metro staffer, Mike Lacey, to help break down this week's biggest headlines. New questions about Strobel House, a possible audit for the Office of Homeless Services, Congressman Andy Ogles said what about the National Guard coming to Nashville, and believe it or not, we actually end on some really good news. It's Friday, September 5th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Mike Lacey, welcome back to CityCast Nashville.
Thank you for having me. I hope you don't regret it.
Mike, we're glad to have you here. To catch folks up, you've been on the podcast before talking about issues within the Office of Homeless Services, but you are effectively an independent journalist. You've got a Substack called Rich Text, which we'll link in our show notes. You're also a former Metro staffer who worked in the office of Mayor John Cooper. So, Marie, let's get into it.
Happy birthday to you. Nope, not to you or to us. It's Strobel House's first birthday. August 22nd was the first birthday of Strobel House, a building that's touted as Nashville's one-of-a-kind permanent supportive housing solution and a major feather in the cap of Mayor Freddie O'Connell. People gathered at Strobel House to celebrate the anniversary. And Mike, you were there. What was the party like?
It was pretty fun. They were giving tours hosted by some of the people that live there. We were invited to tour the entire building, the first floor and the third floor.
Why not the second floor?
There was a lot of water damage, and on follow-up, there had been a fire, which caused some damage, and still waiting for some OEM public records requests to see what really happened. But I did see it firsthand, and there was all the flooring was removed on the second floor. Clearly, the sprinklers had been on and had caused a lot of damage.
Other than the fact that you uncovered that a fire had transpired, the party was celebratory. Who all was there?
Director Calvin gave comments. The now former executive director of DePaul USA gave some comments.
So, former executive director. So, the party was on August 22nd, and then it turns out August 25th, just days after this all went down, they resigned.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. Someone who had been executive director for 15 years. He said that he would be stepping down by today, I believe. So if this was something that was in the making, they really are kind of rapidly replacing their executive director that oversees facilities across the country.
Yeah, so at the party, you didn't get a sense?
I did not get a sense that from his comments, he was imminently departing. His comments didn't allude to that. He was sort of excited to talk about services that were newly going to be available for residents there, most of which sounded like things that were in their contract. And the existence of their contract is sort of, I think, what we're sort of hedging around is that they had just 3 days earlier actually gotten back into contract with Metro despite being paid over $500,000.
Let's remind our listeners at home about this. So all of this, the party, the resignation of the DePaul USA executive director, this happened just days after you, Mike, reported that despite Metro's contract with DePaul USA, which is the company that had been hired to effectively run Strobel House, despite Metro's contract with them ending in September of last year, Office of Homeless Services Director April Calvin authorized $500,000 in payments to DePaul USA between January and May of this year via invoices that were backdated to make them look like they fell during the contract period. She was also using a payment system that fell outside the purview of Metro Finance, so no one knew what was happening. Did I get your reporting right on that?
I've been asked to correct the record on the precise terminology of the word backdating. The invoices that were submitted say that they were submitted for in January, February, March, April, May of 2025. That is when, in fact, they were submitted. So they were not backdated to seem like they were submitted earlier. But the point of the fact is that the service dates listed, they point back to when they did have a contract, and they cite the specific contract that does have those dates and had been fully expended. And then they wrote the total contract amount on the invoices to say $1.2 million, as if this contract had been extended or something. And then when they did pass a contract in this week that we're talking about, it was not for $1.2 million. It wasn't like that was a misunderstanding. It just seems inaccurate. And I will leave it for legal reasons as non-intentional, because I can't intuit anyone's intentionality with any of these things.
Despite that information, Metro Council has now signed a $3.5 million contract extension with DePaul USA. Mike, do you think DePaul is doing an adequate job of managing that supportive housing facility?
No, I don't think so. I've talked to people who worked for them and have since been let go since they were willing to speak about what was going on there. It doesn't seem like the residents there are getting connected to the services that they need. There's reports of, and documentation of violence that occurred there, all out of contract. I will say, I told council that it's really important to have a contract, even if this vendor is not ideal, because there's been 10 months of really intense, dangerous things happening where the city is fully on the hook. I had one council member who was, I think, maybe trying to make me not upset about there being benches taken away for the homeless, being like, see, I voted against the contract. And I'm kind of like, I don't think that was like the right move, but like, thanks for thinking of me.
Now that you've brought up the benches, let's pull back and take kind of a bird's eye view of our entire continuum of care, the entire way we are addressing homelessness here in Nashville. Yesterday, you published new reporting on your Substack showing that despite massive gains in funding to the Office of Homeless Services and a massive increase in the number of local encampments that have been closed, including Old Tent City, Nashville is not seeing a decrease in the number of unhoused folks surviving outdoors here, and B, not seeing an increase in the number of people we are housing. Mike, if this is true, if the number of people on the streets is not going down and the number of people we are housing is not going up, but the budget of OHS is blossoming, where's all the money going?
I mean, it's taken some real burned bridges to get the public records requests to answer those questions precisely. And there's some pretty easy question marks to make about the efficiency of that spending. I think you did frame it in the right way, which is, look, no one is under the illusion that local government is the most effective and we always use our resources super wisely. But it's hard to turn a blind eye to things being so out of whack when there's not even a return on this investment. The money has been spent in a way that actually puts people more in homes. Nothing's changed except the number of people taken out of encampments. And that would be one thing if you followed through and gave them housing, but that's not what's happening.
Councilmember Jenny Welsh sent a formal audit request to the Office of Metro Internal Audits, outlining millions of dollars in suspected financial irregularities and questionable payments coming out of OHS. Her letter, which you can read on the Nashville Scenes website, calls out specific actions and payments as suspicious. Mike, what are the general details there?
Well, I mean, a big part of it is the Strobel House funding. There's also a $130,000 credit card that they had as a department. But in addition to having a credit card, there's tens of thousands of dollars of reimbursements that its staff and leadership got. There's other things like they had a lot of what's called ARPA, American Rescue Plan money. And that is really specific what you can use it for. And one of those fund lines was for landlord engagement. And the Landlord Engagement Fund is supposed to be bringing on board landlords that could be placing vulnerable people there and to be paying rent and repair fees to get that to open up. Because there is a lot of housing, actually. You just need to turn the tap on to get it. But what else we found out is that this line was being billed against for temporary staff that were doing things that had nothing to do with landlord engagement, including a pretty significant amount for Director Calvin's personal assistant, who is not a landlord engagement specialist.
We did reach out to the Office of Homeless Services to get their comment on the potential audit, as well as the fire at Strobel House and the resignation of the director of DePaul USA. Demetris Cheney-Perkins, the public information coordinator for OHS, responded with the following statement. For 3 years, every audit against this office has been found unfounded, and this latest request by Councilmember Welsh includes what's already been disproven. Despite these distractions, we have stayed focused on results. In just 2 years, we've helped more than 3,800 people move into permanent housing, opened Nashville's first permanent supportive housing development, and secured nearly $12 million in funding for our community. While other cities saw homelessness rise by 36%, Nashville held the line at just 2.4%. We take taxpayer stewardship seriously, and our record speaks for itself. One last thing from your reporting yesterday that I'd love for you to address, Mike, is that Mayor O'Connell helped create the Office of Homeless Services when he was still serving on Metro Council, but he made one important change to the office before the bill passed. What was that change?
Mayor O'Connell drafted, then council member, the Office of Homeless Services, and the night that it was being discussed, he had an amendment that he brought where instead of the Homelessness Planning Council, the HPC, which is a democratic body that oversees it, instead of this democratic body being the ones that vote for who the executive director of the Office of Homeless Services is and hold them accountable, it became a direct appointment by the mayor's office, which also meant that the mayor's office had de facto firepower on this position, and therefore the real exclusive oversight. When originally conceived, as he originally presented it to the public in tweets that I found where he's actually critiquing the Cooper administration for shutting down encampments without any clear process and accountability, he pitches the Office of Homeless Services as a way to have transparency and accountability in this process. And then literally at the very last moment that would be possible, he took out that accountability and no one on council objected. I think people took his word that it made sense and maybe he thought it was the right thing. But I point to not just political theory that this is a bad idea of how to run government institutions with like vital, essentially commodities that we need to be independent from political influence. It's not just in theory a bad idea, it isn't working. This office was invented in 2022. It's got 4 times the budget what existed before. It's not doing better unless all we care about is closing encampments and making people just have to figure it out somewhere else on someone else's dime. You know, I'm not just trying to begin a career as a journalist. I'm trying to have change made, and part of that is us being honest about it. So I hope now that an extremely thorough request for an audit has been submitted, now that people are paying attention to the fact that consolidation of power perhaps solves some problems, but creates much larger ones. I'm not overly optimistic, if I'm honest, because I was talking to a council member about the vibes after the different council elections that happened this week. It seemed pretty intense on the floor. There were very narrow votes, and I was told that there was not a lot of congratulations and handshaking. It was a bit tense, and there seems to be a duality showing up in our local politics, and one side of that is a sense that the progressive ideology of the administration should have the autonomy over boards and commissions and these offices and should be unchecked, and that you're kind of an enemy to democratic values just because we are dubious of the idea that a couple people who are not elected are best to oversee and hold accountable this entire system and this $3.2 billion budget affecting the lives of 700,000 people.
We thank you for all your reporting and all that context. We're going to take a quick break, actually. And when we come back, Whitney's going to give us a very quick rundown of Metro Council this week, and we'll look ahead to the potential return of immigration and customs enforcement this month. Nashville has plenty of live music, but you are missing out if you've never experienced Musicians Corner in Centennial Park. It's unlike anything else in town. First off, it's a 16-year-old multi-genre concert series that's absolutely free. Plus, it's pet-friendly, has a kids' activity area, and you can pull out a blanket, grab a bite, and hear some of the finest musicians from Nashville and beyond. Musicians Corner takes place every single Friday in September from 5 to 9 p.m. with live music, food trucks, artisan vendors, craft beer, wine, cocktails, and more. Check out performances from Parker Millsap, Lachlan Strings with Amanda Shires, Cedric Burnside, Ron Gallo, and so many more. It's produced by the nonprofit Centennial Park Conservancy and supported by CityCast Nashville. Visit musicianscorner.com for the full lineup. At Tuesday's Metro Council meeting, as Mike mentioned, there was a closely divided election for new leaders within their ranks, and Whitney is going to give us a quick rundown on that.
So, bunch of elections. It's the start of a new council term, effectively. So every year it refreshes. People get nominated to new committees by the vice mayor, and then we need to elect people to run those various committees. The biggest election was possibly of who's going to become council president pro tem. This is the person who sits in the big chair in the absence of Vice Mayor Angie Henderson. This year, it will be Councilmember Delicia Porterfield, who was elected in an 18-18 tie over Councilmember Russ Bradford. And you might be asking, how did she win in a tie? And this is what the vice mayor does. So Vice Mayor Angie Henderson cast the deciding vote in that election. I personally am a huge fan of both of these human beings, but I do appreciate how quickly Delicia talked while chair of Budget and Finance. She really knows how to run a meeting. So for the sake of expediency, let's get the fast talker in there. Up next was who's going to be elected chair of the Planning and Zoning Committee, and this was another incredibly close one. Councilmember Rollin Horton, who y'all might remember recently led the rezoning of the Nations, was elected chair by one vote over Councilmember John Rutherford. And, you know, this is one to watch because, as Mike kind of alluded to, council is a little split right now, and one of the issues that they're extremely split on is how to make the kinds of sweeping zoning changes that are necessary to build the amount of housing we need to address our housing crisis. It's happening at a snail's pace. And so it will be interesting to see if Councilmember Horton, as chair of Planning and Zoning, can help move the ball forward a little bit faster. And then the last close vote was for who will serve on the Audit Committee. An interesting week for the Audit Committee to come up twice. Councilmember Jason Spain was elected easily, but it came down to a tight race between Delicia Porterfield and Councilmember Courtney Johnston. Councilmember Porterfield prevailed there again, but this is interesting given Councilmember Ginny Welsh's audit request. Councilmember Johnston, she sits on the Homelessness Planning Council. That's who oversees the Office of Homeless Services. Can't decide who is in charge of the Office of Homeless Services, as we just learned from Mike. So, Mike, did that do any dingy-dingies for you?
Well, Johnston's very interesting on this. I spoke to her early on doing research about all this, and she's extremely clear-eyed and very helpful about how much $25 million set aside for housing was not used in a way that made any sense and did not bring about that housing. But then if you ask her about like the other $25 million that was set aside for services, there is no criticism for Director Calvin's actions that she has like brought forth publicly. So it's just very interesting to see where people are able to openly identify where we're not making progress on these things, but then for whatever reason, maybe you want to like take credit for the successful parts of it, or because it is a very powerful tool to identify yourself with a fully autonomous Office of Homeless Services that can shut down an encampment. I don't know anyone's reasons for wanting to identify closely with a department like this. The kind of metaphor I've been saying is it's like people taking credit for building the Titanic while it's sailing out on its maiden voyage. Like, I'm not sure that's a thing you really want to tie yourself too closely to, but a lot of people are competing to say that they built it, so.
Well, finally, this week, the Nashville Banner reported on the chilling effects on Metro Nashville Public Schools attendance and enrollment due to, in large part, the presence of ICE within our community. This article actually spoke to a local family who told their experience and how scared they were to leave the house, keeping their 5 kids home from school when ICE was setting dragnets in South Nashville.
Mike, you had a hand in trying to identify all the people who were disappeared by ICE, especially during that big May 4th dragnet. I mean, how much information were you ultimately able to gather, and what do we know now about the people who are gone from our community?
The city, kind of unsurprisingly, wasn't able to obtain anything from ICE. The information that was able to be gathered was from the community itself, whether people knew that their family members were stopped and disappeared, or they just went missing that night. I don't know how more dramatic to make the crisis this is appear to people. There's a lot of still rhetoric amongst liberals of, it really sounds like we're heading towards X, Y, and Z, random terrible thing from the 1930s. Here's the thing, it's like, you don't need to wait. Like, you don't need to wait for things to get worse to make these things something to do something about. We already got it. We've really invested in the political structure to allow these things to be possible and for people to disappear with no accountability. So you don't need to set a timer for when there's a real problem. Like, it's here.
The banner actually obtained records on enrollment and attendance data for 20 public schools in the area, which shows a notable decline in enrollment and a spike in absenteeism, especially in South Nashville, starting as early as January when Trump took office. Though chronic absenteeism is an ongoing post-pandemic issue, educators attribute some of the recent shifts to growing fear and anxiety within our immigrant communities. There is speculation that ICE will be returning mid-September through December. My question, though, is, are local educators' hands tied when it comes to immigration enforcement, or do they have the responsibility to their students to keep them safe within their schools?
I very much appreciate people running the numbers and really seeing that this has had an impact, and that's incredibly important for the public record. But there's also a bit of a pearl clutchingness in some of the reactions to these things of wow, this is having some really negative consequences. And it's this is the point, you guys. This is an intentional plan to terrify people to not participate in our society and to think about up and self-deporting as they force people to do. That was some of the firsthand things that I do know about, is that it's not like these things are being done in an above-board, humane way. I know of one case in particular that someone was held down by multiple ICE officials in a detention center and put their thumb on a document to biometrically agree to self-deport. This isn't the knock-on effects of a inelegantly executed plan on immigration. The fear is the point. A system is what a system does, and if it's causing all this fear and havoc, that's the point of it.
Unfortunately, we can't conclude this segment without talking about our good friend, Congressman Andy Ogles. Andy Ogles called this week for the National Guard to be sent to Nashville, a la Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and what the president is now proposing in Chicago. Ogles says that they need to come deal with our apparently lawless streets, and he also accused the mayor of colluding with gangs. Mayor Freddie O'Connell colluding with gangs.
Literally, what are you talking about?
As usual, our response to Andy Ogles tends to be, what are you talking about?
I just want to say, I know people in gangs, and I know the mayor, and they're not friends. They don't get along.
In response to Ogles' comments, according to the Tennessean, Mayor O'Connell responded, Congressman Ogles neither lives in nor even has an office in Nashville. Perhaps, Mayor O'Connell continued, he'd like to invite the National Guard into his actual community. It's outrageous that our absentee member of Congress would be so disrespectful to our hardworking police who have produced multiple year-over-year reductions in crime in Nashville. I say good on you for that, and crime is down. Don't listen to anyone who tells you it's not. I know that local news wants you to think that we're all going to die, but go out and touch grass and play with your friends.
Go touch grass. And now, finally, Donna.
Good news. Everybody, Monday is the last day to register to vote in the Tennessee 7th District Congressional primary. This is deciding who's going to fill Representative Mark Green's seat. We've got primaries. Early voting begins September 17th. That's right around the corner. So Monday, last day to register to vote. Go to govotetn.com. Get that done if you haven't yet.
And there was a burglary at Rose Pepper Cantina, August 27th. In the middle of the night, a trio of thieves broke in and stole more than $1,000 of tequila, which the co-owner of the restaurant said that the theft actually translates to about $5,000 in lost sales.
Marie, that doesn't sound like good news.
Yeah.
Wait for it. The cool thing is the whole community came out in support. They didn't have their regular tequila to make margaritas for everybody, but they went into their old stock and brought out color-changing tequila. And so they made really fun margaritas for the community. On the Instagram post of these thieves stealing the tequila, @fine.yart posted, "Whoever stole our tequila, we hope your hangover lasts forever," which then inspired the restaurant to change its signage outside, the famous marquee that they have. And I saw it last night. So cool. So go on and support Rose Pepper Cantina.
Now that there's been some changes in the historic and zoning stuff, I would really propose that their marquee be a historic landmark status.
We love you, Rose Pepper, and hope you're okay. Marie, there was an animal we've never heard of before that showed up at the Nashville Zoo this week.
Aardwolves! Mike, have you ever heard of an aardwolf?
Not until I got the prep doc for this show, and I am thrilled, and my girlfriend verbatim said, yeah, they've got a U vibe.
Oh my God.
So if you were an animal.
Mike Lacey might be an aardwolf. So basically, these are teeny tiny hyenas. They're the smallest in the hyena family, I do believe, and they're very elusive.
This does sound like me.
Mike Lacey's small hyena. Our Nashville Zoo takes pride in the way that they help save endangered species. So these aardwolves are going to be living at the zoo. You can go see them starting today. And what's cool about them, I think, is if you're thinking hyena like Lion King hyena, these guys only eat termites.
I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm not attacking big mammals. I'm just eating the termites of government.
Another story that caught my eye, Marie, please tell us what my hero, Amy Grant, is doing to help develop clean water technology while I quietly sing El Shaddai in the background.
Amy Grant has helped develop clean water technology with the Florida-based company Altitude Water. They began working with Amy Grant in 2014 when she needed clean drinking water for a youth summer camp. Grant got a large machine from the company that then produced over 100 gallons of drinking water each day. So now Grant's Hidden Trace Farm is fully water independent, storing up to 800 gallons of water a day with no reliance on city infrastructure.
Yes, this is awesome. And this company has since gone on to take these machines around the world and including to Asheville, North Carolina in the wake of Hurricane Helene.
Oh, that's great.
Hooray to them, but mostly hooray to Amy Grant.
I have some insider firsthand knowledge that Amy Grant rules, y'all. Like, if y'all sleeping on Amy Grant, what she's doing behind the scenes in lots of ways is awesome. I'm not saying to give any less love to our girl Dolly, but if you're into that kind of vibe, you should look into things that she's doing behind the scenes. It's really cool stuff.
All right, what's going on this weekend?
Oh my gosh, so much. The Nashville Fair kicks off tonight, and y'all know I love the fair.
I'm going to Monster Trucks. Bigfoot's not there, but there's some other big names in the monster truck world. I don't mean to derail this, but monster trucks are kind of like pro wrestlers. Like, there is a discrete number of them, and there's some good names there. It's going to be a good turnout.
Okay, that's at Bridgestone. I am going to the International Night Market tomorrow night at the headquarters of the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition. They are down there in South Nashville. It is a beautiful event. Come taste food from all over the world, see cultural performances, and basically stand outside on what I hope will be a beautiful night.
And the Highland Games are all weekend out in Hendersonville. So if you want to see some sexy men in kilts, join me for some log throwing.
Yeah, that's where they like throw a phone pole, basically.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I just say how hot that sounds? Okay.
All right. And then one last thing that we think people out there might be interested in knowing, and this is thanks to the reporting of the Nashville Banner, we learned this. Andy Ogles, y'all remember Andy Ogles? We talked about him just a minute ago, is hosting, believe it or not, a town hall. He's appearing in person in the district. This is happening 8:30 Saturday morning at Big Bad Breakfast on Wall Street in Spring Hill.
I feel like he's putting the time just to keep me from going there.
Not up on a 8:30 on a Saturday?
For a big bad breakfast with Andy, maybe.
Well, we really hope people will take advantage of this. You know, you think that aardwolves are elusive. We hope people will take advantage of this opportunity to go see one of Nashville's members of Congress and let them know what you think.
Well, y'all, guess what is back tonight? Fridays by the River kicks off 3 o'clock to 8 p.m. down by the river in Shelby Park. The band playing tonight is Runner of the Woods. And the food trucks, oh my God, I'm so excited. Birria Babe, Nicoletto's, Lady Dogs, Mag Mile Pizza, and Sweet So. And we're going to be there. The Nashville City Cast team drinking our beer.
We're so excited to return as presenting sponsor.
That's right.
Joy and beer and food and kids and dogs in a park. So come see us Fridays by the River.
And Mike, thank you for joining us today. This really has been so informative, and we invite you back anytime you want to get on the mic.
Hey, I love making myself more difficult to hire in this town in any capacity. This has been so much fun.
Have a great weekend, y'all.
Yes.
Take care of each other.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Nashville neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson. Our executive producer is Whitney Pasterek. Our producer is Daniel Sumstein, with extra support this week from producer Zoe Culkin. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prof Jenkins, with additional music by Dwayne Russell from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!